Okay, so let's get going with our presentation tonight. Our presenter tonight is Daphne Choi. Daphne's been involved in the promotion and development of volleyball in Ontario for over a decade. She's been involved with a bunch of different clubs and teams and programs. She started as an assistant coach with the Etobicoke Titans club, and since then, she's been part of obviously helped with many club teams, but also has been part of our OVA high performance programs, including the Ontario Summer Games and our Tall Maples program, where I had the chance to see her work, and is one of the reasons why I'm really looking forward to tonight's presentation. So other than that, Daphne is the head coach of the George Brown Huskies Women's Varsity Program, where she aims to teach athletes to set increasingly improving sport and academic goals. So yeah, we're really happy to have Daphne with us. And I should mention, she is also involved as part of our board of directors. Yeah, very involved in volleyball, and really happy to have her here with us tonight to speak to you about how she keeps organized, and she's going to give us some tips to stay organized. And I can vouch for the fact that she's extremely well organized, and that's why I can't wait to have some of her tips, because I need them. So Daphne, thanks for being with us. I'm done talking. Take it away.
All right, thanks, LP. So I assume you guys can see my screen now.
Yes.
So yes, my name is Daphne. I'm currently the head coach for the women's program at George Brown College. As LP mentioned, I've been known historically to be an organized coach. I by no means consider myself, I think LP will remember my conversation with him, I don't know that I consider myself an expert on really anything. But pretty much everything that I've learned has been from somebody else in sort of like a mentoring or sharing capacity. So I'm happy to share what I know. And if you have any questions, please feel free. I'll try to keep looking at this chat here and there. Otherwise, you can email me, and that's my actual email address on the bottom if you want to pretend to be a Nigerian prince and ask me for money. So a little bit more about who I am. Again, I'm an OVA coach. I've been an OVA coach for just over 10 years, which I guess isn't that long. I've been involved in the high performance programs. I'm a board of directors member. I also love to create things and do handcrafted type things. And I've recently made 2 children. And in my professional career, I'm a senior crime analyst with Toronto Police Service. It sounds fancy, but really it can be really boiled down to some simple things. And basically that's trying to turn huge amounts of data into decisions for public safety. So that's turning numbers and information into tangible and understandable pieces for people. In addition, I try to create efficiencies, so try to fast track certain things, make certain processes faster, so that we're using both ourselves and our police officers more efficiently. And of course, because I'm in a senior role, I train other people, including my staff, in terms of using different tools and how they can use very simple tools that everyone has in terms of Microsoft programs to their benefit. So what are the benefits of being a planner? There's obviously benefits to not being a planner, but what are some of the benefits of being a planner? Well, number one, you look professional and prepared, which is ironic considering that my original presentation didn't save for tonight, but nevertheless, you look professional and prepared. One of the things that I'll always remember is one of my athletes saying something like, I love that you always have a practice plan printed out when you come to practice, because I feel like you've put the time in ahead of time. And so without actually saying it, that's one way of demonstrating to your athletes that you're putting in that time and that you care about it. Of course, being a planner means that you're establishing some kind of flow or some kind of action. So sometimes the things that you can do can help figure out what the next step is. As well, it can make some of your own personal development training easier. If you've gone through the old NCCP training, you know that there's a lot of paperwork involved in terms of doing practice plans, and as well, it can help you develop some of your own coaching style. My first tip is to create templates that are going to drive action or establish conversation. Sorry, did my internet just drop out?
Yeah, I think it's being a little choppy.
I'll try that again. So hopefully you can see my screen now. So for me, creating templates means things like having preseason and postseason interview sheets pre-done. It means having a practice plan template that I fill out before every practice. It can mean things like having stat forms done ahead of time that are going to help me during a game. I actually have game sheets where I put in things like the lineups that I'm proposing, who's not on my roster, who's available that day. Create templates that are based off of things that you would typically draw all the time. Scouting sheets, for example. There is no one size fits all. It's what works for you, and that might change over time. One of the benefits, second benefit to being a planner is that you can, what I tried to come up with an infomercial type thing was to write it down and sleep. Remembering all those things that just pop up,
Daphne?
Not involved while you're doing something else, that you can get on that way.
Daphne, can you hear me?
All right, I'm not sure what's going on with my internet, but I'm going to try LP to join this Zoom call through my phone, and I'll share my audio through my phone.
Oh, okay.
And try to share the rest from my screen.
Okay, let's try that.
I've had some ongoing complaints with my internet provider, but at least this way you can still hear me even if my stuff drops it.
Yeah, I think if we have clear audio, yeah, you'll have to shut down one of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay, so at least
there's still a little bit of echo though, so I'm not sure where that comes from.
Okay, how about that?
Good.
Okay, so at least if I drop out from my video sharing screen, at least you can still hear me, and then we'll just work in the background there. Okay, let's try this. So the idea is that you can write it down and you can go to sleep. So things are not being forgotten, they're not being missed. If you're anything like me and you're potentially a parent of 2 young kids, you have a lot in your mental cache, and you can really only retain so much information before you have a total memory overload. It can also help you prepare for upcoming events, have some long-term athlete development on paper, which it doesn't really sound glamorous, but if you make it engaging, then you can have tangible things written down that will help your athletes do goal setting. So actually sitting down with an athlete and writing down on a template or a form, what you guys want to accomplish together, and being able to actually pull that up later and look at it to see if you've met your goals. And
So tip number 2 is to have a running calendar log or list. So this might look like a pocketbook to somebody. It might look like a little notebook, anywhere to write down the stuff that you have pop up in your mind. And if you allow yourself to write it down in that moment, it becomes a real thing, a real task to do. And then you're not carrying it around with you. So for me, this looks, kind of crazy. This calendar in the back is something I made just in like Google Docs. And it was for our season a few years ago. And I'm color coding things so that I can see how important certain things are. Blue, I like to use blue for regular practice days. I like to use bars that go across and create, your own level of importance, and little things to note so that, the eyes get drawn to certain places. And I share this with my assistant coaches, who I just want to give a shout out to. I think they're on this call just to keep me accountable. And this is something I share, and this is a, piece that we're all on the same page with and can all understand. As a little sidebar, the little thing on the right, this calendar on the right here, that's just overkill. That just shows you what my current calendar looks like. This is something I created. You in no way need to be this ridiculous with what you do. I realize that this is a little bit much for some people. But basically I use this as a means of, just putting stuff down when I think of something, to have my appointments again in different colors. And this one on the bottom is my actual fuzzed out Google Calendar. It's kind of a running joke, but kind of not. That the reason I keep my Google Calendar so up to date is because I studied forensics after my undergrad, and I always felt like if I was murdered or something, I needed police to be able to see exactly how I spent all of my time and where I was. So that's kind of where that came out of. So I don't expect anyone to get to that level. But it's been very beneficial to me. And I can share these calendars with people who need to know that information. The third reason to be a planner is it helps you be more efficient, both with time and with people. So you're avoiding repetition. You're ensuring that things are actually done to completion. So if you make something like a template, then you're actually ensuring that you fill the template out in whole. So when I was doing my coaching certification, the things that were listed, I made sure I created a template that would actually fulfill all of those things, and just made sure I filled out the whole sheet. Make use of all of your resources. So I'm huge on trying to figure out, during my practices, trying to figure out how best to ensure I'm using all of my athletes. I've planned some poor practices in my lifetime, where I had athletes standing around doing nothing. And when someone told me about that, I realized that that's inefficient use of their time and my time with them. And then the last thing is you can use technology to save time. So if you're in any kind of professional position where you're using things like Excel, or if you want to be really crazy and you're using databasing and SQL and stuff like that, those are skills that are transferable. You can use those to make shortcuts for yourself. And I'll show a little demo here for my tip number 3, which is to create templates for repetitive exercises. So as a little demo, I'm going to show you how I make court diagrams. So we're going to make this together. And I know when people start to do the stuff, they may just Google this, Google a court diagram, but it may not have all the things you want, or it may not be the colors that you like, or the resolution might be really bad. And you'll probably spend more time trying to Google it and find something than you would creating it. So we're going to really, really quickly create this in PowerPoint, and I'll show you how fast this is. One of the cool things about PowerPoint is that a lot of the things will snap into place. So things will show up right next to each other or in the middle. And again, I'll just show you how fast you can actually do this. So what I'm going to do, if you have PowerPoint open, I invite you to try to do this at the same time. So I'm going to draw a square. So I'm going to insert, shape, And I'm going to select the rectangle. And I think if I press Control, or sorry, if I press Shift, it actually will create a square for me when I do it. So shape. So I've created a square. I'm going to make it about that big. Okay, and then I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. I'm going to put it beside that one. I'm going to do that again. So now I've got 1 by 3. I'm going to copy those 3 and put it beside there. I've got 6 that way. Now I'm going to copy that, paste that. It kind of puts it beside, puts that beside. So now I have what should equate to 3 by 3 and 3 by 3, which is the same ratios as 9 by 9. So now I want to create one that has all of it. So that's this big one. So that's the big rectangle. I'm just going to move this a little bit. I'm going to insert a line now. And I think if I press Shift, it will go straight down. So it'll be an actual vertical line. And I'm going to use some of the defaults here and the styles to make it a really thick line. Okay. And so I'm just going to move my rectangle back a little bit to check if I like where everything's placed. Maybe I want this a little bit lower. So I'm just going to move everything a little bit lower. Okay. Now I'm going to create my attack lines. So I'm going to insert another line. I'm going to do it here. Again, if I press the Shift button, it goes straight down. Okay. And I'm going to give it a style that looks kind of like this. Okay, so I'm going to move, I'm just going to shorten it. And again, it will kind of snap to where the chord lines are. I'm going to copy it, bring it over to where this was, and it's naturally snapping itself there. And I've already created my chord diagram, so I'm done. So that to me was a lot easier than trying to Google one that comes up in a bad resolution. I can now change the colors of this. I can make this smaller or bigger as I want. I can print this, and now I own this. So I don't have to worry about stealing it from somebody else. This is exactly what I wanted. Okay, so quick little demo. We did that in what, a minute, less than. Okay, back to here. Okay, reason number 4 for being a planner. And this, I guess, is my whole professional career here, is making tangible evidence for decision making. So one of the famous questions that I always get from my athletes is, who's going to be your libero? Who gets to play outside? Who gets to play middle? And at the end of the day, some of it comes down to feel. Yeah, some of it comes down to, I feel that this is going to be right. I feel that this person should be in this position. But if you can back it up with evidence, that's going to be incredibly helpful. And it's hard to argue with for your athletes. And hopefully that data matches up with what your feel is. So by planning to do this, we can create database conclusions that will drive those next steps. It can provide understandable information to the athletes that you're working with and your staff. You can find ways to quantify your game, and you can set goals and measure whether or not you're meeting those goals. So, tip number 4, find measurable values to create tangible information. So that's not necessarily just statistics. It could be a lot of things. So for example, one of my mentors used to poll his athletes ahead of practice to figure out what their 1 to 10, what their mental state was like that day. And he gathered all that information, right? So you can gather all that information. You can calculate over time based off of your season what the fluctuations are in your team's mental state. And that's, from their own assessment. That's finding a value. There's obviously statistics that can be done, and we're going to look into that now. So a live demo here's some passing statistics. So first of all, we're just going to look at some pro passers here, so we can find some numbers for their passing statistics. So here we go. So here's this guy, he's pretty pro. Clearly you can tell by his outfit, he's a pro. So we're going to check out his passing here. It's kind of like a 0. Maybe like a 1. Maybe like a 1. That's pretty good. Maybe I've got 2 options there.
Daphne, sorry, it's a little choppy. We have a hard time seeing the video. One thing you may want to try is if you stop sharing and you share again, but you click optimize for video sharing.
It's okay. It's not really important for you to see the video very clearly.
Okay.
I just wanted to insert pictures of my son passing. So on this video on the left, he's got some 0s, 1s, and maybe a couple 2s, and on the right, he's got 2 2s. So what I'm going to do is switch over to here, and I'm going to show you very quickly how I create this. So this is something you can use in practice very, very easily. I mean, it takes some really, really basic Excel skills here. So basically I'm going to put my son, I'm going to put myself, I'll put my husband and my daughter. And let's say I'm going to judge this out of 10 passes. Okay, so I'm going to give them 10 passes, and I'm going to ask it to calculate the average of those 10 passes. And I'm going to apply that to all of them. And here I am in practice. Maybe I have this on my iPad, maybe I have my laptop there, and I can go ahead and I can start, during the drill, figuring out how everyone's passing, and I can put these in, and these are going to be live as we go. I can even add some color coding if I want to be able to visualize this better. So I can have this happen. And I'm apparently a fantastic passer and my husband is not. I can change the percentages of this. And I can go ahead and I can fill out this information. Let's just say I've gone through practice now and this is what it looks like. So at the end of practice, I have now just in 1 second been able to quantify on the spot exactly what it looks like. And it was a very simple thing. It took maybe a minute to do it. So again, it's a little bit more effort maybe to bring out a laptop, but if you're able to do this, it actually can help you find some of those efficiencies. Okay.
There's a question.
So one of the things.
Sorry, there's a question directly related to that
Yep.
in the chat. So I'll just ask it for you. Do you have tips on how to keep track of these statistics effectively during your practice to import into a spreadsheet later? Do you print it out and manually track them, or?
Sorry, the question is to not have to do it digitally during practice, right?
Yeah, how to keep track of these statistics effectively during your practice to import into a spreadsheet later.
Okay, so one way you can do this is obviously to create the back end of this. If you want to have it be able to do it on paper, you can. You can obviously create this document and you can fancy it up how you like. And essentially you can print this out with without the numbers each time. And you can take this back home and just insert the numbers in if you like. So that's one way to do it. If it was going to be me, for sure there would be a template for this. And it can be that you can, if you find something you like, you can use that every time you do a passing drill, you're going to take out this template and fill it in. In the past, what I've done with my staff is actually take a whiteboard out and allow my staff to put the numbers up as the athletes are passing, so that after they're done, they can actually see what we wrote down. And then we can just take a picture of whatever we've put down on the whiteboard and then transfer it back to a spreadsheet after the fact. So that's one way to do it. If you're a fan of an iPad and don't want to bring up a spreadsheet, I do use an app called GoodNotes 5. And that's basically where I actually have all of my templates in GoodNotes 5. It is a paid app, but I use it every day. There isn't a day that goes by where I don't use this app. And so once I've built a template that I'm really happy with, you can put that into GoodNotes and write on top of it. And you can create a new page using that template every single time, or you can copy it, everything over, including your writing. You can put pictures in there. And so that's another option if you want to have a digital space to write it down. I have an iPad Pro, the biggest and fanciest one I could find. But I know that it works on some lower level iPads as well. Was there another question, or is that good?
I think that's good. There's a follow-up. So that would be, as a head coach, do you do this or have your assistants do this tracking? And I guess I would add a layer to this. Perhaps you do have the luxury of having lots of assistants maybe at the college level, but how would you answer this question perhaps for a coach at the club level that may or may not have assistant coaches?
So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So there's options, right? You could do it as a head coach. You could do it from your own perspective if you wanted. You could have assistant coaches do it. You can also have the athletes do it for each other. My assistant coaches came up with that idea this week. You can actually bring out a mini whiteboard. So I have a whiteboard that I bought, I think, at the dollar store. It's like this big. And while they're doing the drill, in partners, one of them does the numbers for one, and then they switch, right? So it's actually their own peers that are judging those numbers as well, right? And you can sort of do a little bit of a quality control check to figure out if those numbers are right. There's a lot of different options to do it. If at the very worst scenario, you just don't have extra hands at all, you could optionally record your practice and take it home and do that work there. That's at the very, last resort. But, if you're anything like me, you've got a few bodies hanging around, maybe, an injured athlete, maybe an assistant coach that can help you out with that. I would definitely find a way to do that if you're not doing it yourself. If you're just head coaching on your own, I would hesitate to pull yourself out from an error correction role and try to get someone else to do that. Any more follow-up on that?
Well, thank you, Daphne.
Okay. So what I hear often though, those are my main tips. So create templates that are going to help you create those efficiencies, write things down as you go. But I hear a lot from people, I'm not the planning type. I'm not a planner. That's not like me. I get that. Not everyone is. For example, I am a planner. My husband is not. Not everyone is supposed to be that way. Even within my assistant coaches, not all of them are planner types. But I also believe that language is very powerful. And if you default to saying, well, I'm not that type of person that plans or writes practice plans for my practices, you're sealing your own fate, right? That's all you'll ever become. And I don't think we would accept that from our athletes. So I think it's important that we don't accept that from ourselves, that this is just the way I am and that's how it's going to be. At the end of the day, my dad always said, when you hear something, you get information from somebody, digest it and then you can keep it or you can just leave it. So if any of these pieces do not apply to you, I don't say that you have to do it to be successful. These are just the things that have helped me. And of course, if you're doing some short-term investment, like writing things down as you go, that can save you a lot in the long term. I think it's important to always challenge yourself, even if you've got very basic Excel skills, it's important to always challenge yourself. There's a lot that can be done, and I'm going to go into that in a second. And ultimately, these are transferable skills. These are things that you can take into the workplace. If you get more serious, you become like a statistician. These are things that you're going to want to be able to do. So I'll just show some examples of what I mean. For example, this is what I called hot-cold rotations. So this is a little bit more advanced in terms of Excel knowledge. I'm an Excel person. I love Excel. Everything is Excel. I teach a course for it at the Toronto Police College. This is just a short snippet of what my actual statistics log for a game looks like, but this is just the columns that I'm going to focus on today. And basically I've got the sets down, which rally it was within the set. I'll make this a bit bigger. The point where it went to, I think my video cut out again, but I will come back to it. It shows where the point went, if it was for us or against us, and whether or not we were on serve or serve receive. So I think LP is going to let me back in a second.
Yeah, I think your screen is frozen on your Excel here.
Well, that's good. Well, my Zoom is not connecting to you right now, but it will in a second, hopefully.
I think you're back on.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I've been complaining to Rogers for a while. Okay. So back to this. So again, this is a really short version of, if you're curious to know, this is what the actual sheet looks like. So I created this, and I basically enter in these pieces, and all of this will fill on its own. You don't need to know this. This is just something I created, but for our purposes, we're going to look at these 4 columns. So this is how this match went. And it says the set, which rally it was, where the point went, and if we were on serve or serve receive. If your Excel skills are relatively decent and you can learn a lot of the things that I've used here on YouTube, you can create a pivot table, which shows you for each of serve and receive, did the point go to you or was it against you, and which rotation were you in? So I've cleaned this up a little bit to look like this. And I've had some color coding go here, some conditional formatting to go here, which shows me that in this game, when we were in rotation 6 on receive, we had the most issues. Okay. And when we were on serve and we were in rotation 5, we also had the most issues. So for me, that means turning this into a tangible thing, which is the next practice, practicing these rotations in this order, serve or serve receive, right? So I've actually taken this from this game and I can input the information within, a day. And the very next day I have practice, I have physical things that I can work on right away. My sheet goes a little bit crazier in terms of it automatically calculates all of this, the player number and, how many tips or attacks and attempts based off of the information that I'm putting here. And also gives me some information about the other side and that I can remember for the next time. But again, this is all based off of, skills that you can learn on YouTube. This is like essentially pivot tables and conditional formatting. And it's just creating it in a way that the computer understands it. And you can turn a game now into actual information to bring to a practice or to your athletes. Any questions about that before I move on? No. Okay. And the last one that I'll show is a seasonal plan. I know that there was a presentation on planning from the seasonal plan to practices earlier on. So I do my seasonal plan in Excel. And again, this is all really simple Excel's formulas. There's nothing fancy here. These dates, literally I brought them in by putting in one, and then, the next, I brought in 2 dates, and then the 2 dates below that were those dates plus 7 days. So the formula is literally this date plus 7. I dragged it down and there's all my practice dates in there. I like to create rules so that if I were to make this a game, that it highlights into red. I'm huge on color. If it says practice, it's just white. If it's an off day, like a holiday, it automatically turns gray. And I like to keep track of practices, especially at the club level. I was huge on practice attendance. So for me, I like to be able to put numbers to it, to say, as an athlete, especially now at a OCAA level, I have scholarship athletes. I want them to have a certain level of attendance at practice to justify getting scholarship money from the school. So this actually fills in, again, live, these percentages at the top. So if all of my coaches make it to practice on Thursday, I'm going to put ones in here. If they don't, the number at the top is going to change live right away. And these numbers will change as they go. If I leave it blank, it's because they weren't expected to show anyway. So it's not going to include that in the values in the expectations. So as you can see, numbers are changing here. And I can go back to an athlete and say, hey, you've been at 60% for practice right now. If you want to have a conversation about starting on the team, well, then let's get this number up. And little things that I've added to this is I like to, put when things are preseason, if they're early season, if we're in season, or if we're provincials. And because I expect to take my team to nationals, I'm going to put nationals down there. And then as my last little thing that I like to do is I've created rules where this yellow bar is going to move to the most recent date. And this happens automatically from some of the rules that I've created in the background. So I don't have to necessarily find where I am. It's just going to move as I go for the most recent date. Any questions on that? I'm at the tail end here.
Hey, Daphne, can you please change any of the events to off? I want to
Yeah,
see.
sure.
Couldn't see it when you did the first time.
So I can change all of these to off. If I just type the word off, I've made it so that if you see off in this column, it automatically goes gray.
Okay. So because I was wondering if, you see how where you have your attendance, the whole row is also grayed out. Where
yeah, so
I was wondering if your spreadsheet was doing that automatically, and I was like, okay, how do you do that?
This I can. So I understand what you're saying. I didn't in this version because I actually don't have that many off in this version. Okay. But there is a way, and I can take this offline with you, where when this is off, this will automatically gray out. Wow.
Well, I just wrote down a thing. I think we're gonna have to talk about you doing an Excel course for coaches. So, anyways, that's for later.
I'm totally fine with doing that. I can create different levels of that. Like I said, I've done this. I've taught Excel courses before for different things, different levels. I used to create all of my calendars in Excel as well. But at the end of the day, I don't expect anyone to necessarily do things the way that I'm doing them. I think sometimes I'd probably take it to a bit of an extreme. And I don't know that everybody will benefit from the same way that I'm using it. Maybe it's not beneficial for you to take in practice stats. Maybe it's not going to be beneficial for you to have in-game stats to scout teams. Especially at the club level, sometimes, with some of the tournaments, you're, whether you jump from Trillium to championship, sometimes you're not playing the same teams all the time. Sometimes you are, but sometimes you aren't. Is it going to be worth it to create a stats sheet for every single team that you played? Maybe not. But at the end of the day, I think that's the flexibility of having your own art of coaching, is to figure out which pieces are going to be applicable to you and customize it to you based off of the programs that you're familiar with, that you want to challenge yourself with. Just off the top of my head, a lot of the programs that I use for any of the things that I do are things that you can already find on your computer. So PowerPoint, Word, Excel. Like I said, I use GoodNotes a lot. If you want to get a little bit more serious with things, I use two programs. One is called Affinity Publisher. It is a paid program, but it is one of the cheaper paid programs. Affinity Publisher. It does have a bit of a learning curve, and that's where I create a lot of my templates. That it does a lot of the same things that, say, PowerPoint will do. If you're an Adobe subscriber, InDesign is quite good, but again, it's expensive. At some point, I used to get pretty serious with some of my statistics on my athletes, and I would put things in Microsoft Access, which allowed me to create live databases that would show me graphs and visualizations for things. At one point, when I was coaching 17U girls club, I actually created report cards for them, and they would get monthly report cards. And basically, I created these dashboards that would have these stats in them. And then I would just be able to say print, and I actually wouldn't have to create the reports. They would actually already be live and done based off of things that we did in practice, my reflections on them. The only thing I had to add was maybe some wording that had, goal setting and maybe some of my personal comments. I also use Procreate, which is an iOS app. Again, it's a paid app. It is a graphic designing app. But again, I do use it to create templates and to draw things. And I think, and one more, less common in the Microsoft suite is OneNote. OneNote, some people really like it, some people really don't. It has its pros and its cons, but I do use it depending on what I'm trying to do. And of course, I've used Team Snap for several years now. As a means of keeping some of that information in one place for the athletes to also see. At the end of the day, it's all baby steps, which is why I have this video of my daughter taking her first steps here. Whether or not it's choppy doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, she's joyous, she's happy, she's discovering something new. And I think that's what planning should be for you in your coaching journey. Whether you do it in little bits or you are like my son and you're a little bit late to the game, but then once you get it, you hit the ground running and that's all you do now. You're going to be able to make it your own and, steal from other people, like steal from me, take advice from other people and figure out which pieces work for you. So that's all I have, LP. I don't have anything else. That's actually everything I wanted to show. So I'm happy to take questions if there are any, or call it a night at 8:49 p.m.
For sure. Well, we can probably both look at the chat. I think I've asked all of the questions that were sent so far. Yeah, no, I think I was not joking about the Excel course. And then the reason why is, I'm not a beginner with Excel, but I'm definitely not at the level that you're at. And every time I coach, I use Excel to build similar things like my own charts and my own tables and all that stuff, so that I can track the things that I want to track with my athletes. But I think this is exactly the point, right? Like, and what you said is true. It's important that every coach finds what they want to track. But if you don't have the skill on how to use the tool, then you may not even know, or you may not realize opportunities to track certain things, because it may just seem too much work or something. But if you just have the skill to put that table together and it all calculates stuff by itself, I mean, you may start tracking more things, right? So I think knowing the skill may allow coaches to become more creative and expand kind of how they think about tracking their athletes for their own development, right?
For sure. And at the end of the day, like I don't, I get it that not everyone's going to need those Excel skills, right? Not everyone's going to, have a work environment that requires those skills. I have always worked in an environment that required me to have excellent Excel skills. But in the courses that I've taught for my professional career, sometimes we start at the very, very bottom, creating a graph, a simple graph that sort of visualizes things for you in a way that can help you make a decision. I'm happy to have a conversation with you after the fact on how to do that. But again, like it's find your own way, right? I'm not a Mac person, so I don't even know how to do any of this on like numbers or like on pages, as I'm totally not an expert when it comes to that. And at the end of the day, if you want to put this on paper and, use the calculator and do it at the end, that's totally fine. Whichever way is going to be the most comfortable for you, and whichever way is going to be faster, maybe that is faster for you. But at the end of the day, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation on how we can maybe get our coaches using some basic skills to create some shortcuts and save time for people.
For sure, especially since I'm sure a lot of people, on this call have tried looking for apps on an iPad that would do some stats for them. But then oftentimes, if not all the time, you find that, oh, okay, it's taking these stats, but then I want to also know this and also know that. And it just doesn't do it. And then you're like, okay, what do I do? Where, what you've done essentially is creating your own apps,
Right.
and
so
use.
I've had that question a lot, actually. I've had that question of like, what app are you using? And that's the exact problem that I had. So I did use, I still occasionally use like the Solo Stats. I think it's called like their 1, 2, 3 stat app. And that gives me some good information. I still have my team manager do that in game here and there to, just stay involved and to know what the next person serving is and all that. But at the end of the day, like it did not have the things that I felt I needed and wanted to be able to look at. So I started creating my own stuff. And to your point, some of that is going to be overkill for you, right? Even if you've got like things like Huddle, which the OCAA uses to break down all video, some of that might be overkill for you and is, not what you need. At some levels, maybe 15U level, you really just need serve receive and attack, right? Maybe you don't need all of these, assist things and blocking errors, right? So it helps you to sort of tailor things to yourself, which I always encourage.
Yeah, for sure. I know. Yeah. If you have the funds and the skills to use data volley, then sure. But otherwise,
yeah,
Excel is great. So.
Yeah, and when I was doing statistics for Pan Am games, I was able to take software that we're using and be like, I want to create this for myself without paying thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Maybe not looking quite as nice, but make something like that for myself.
Yeah.
And that's where that came in.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Thanks. I don't see any other questions. A couple of thank yous in there. Sure.
I'm happy to stay on the line if anyone wants to ask a question in person. I'll stay on until everyone's gone. But thanks for the opportunity, LP.
Yeah, no, thank you for doing this and connecting with the coaches from the OVA. That's really really great to have you on, and we're gonna have you back on soon.
Sure.
We'll figure something out. Okay, thanks, Daphne. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great evening.